My name is Thomas. I'm 52, and I've been married to my wife, Elaine, for almost 14 years. I entered her life when her son, Caleb, was 12, that challenging age when kids think they know everything and assume every adult is either trying to ruin their life or just doesn't understand. Caleb had a father, Jeremy, but Jeremy was the classic definition of a part-time dad. He'd show up every few months with a fancy gift or tickets to a game, post a picture on Facebook with a syrupy caption, like father-son time, and then vanish until the next photo opportunity. Meanwhile, I was the one picking Caleb up from school, attending parent-teacher conferences, teaching him to drive, and helping with college applications, but I never forced anything. I wasn't trying to replace Jeremy. I was just consistently present and supportive. Still, I always felt like an outsider. Caleb would call me Tom, never Dad, even though he lived in my house, ate food I cooked, and wore clothes I bought. Every Father's Day, he'd post a photo of Jeremy holding him as a baby, captioned The Realist, and every year, Elaine would try to defend it with a weary, "He's just trying to maintain a bond with his father," as if I was asking him to cut Jeremy out. I wasn't. I just wanted to be seen, acknowledged. The distance between us became quieter over time, not louder quieter, colder. I'd ask him about college, and he'd mumble something like, "It's fine," before closing his door. I went to his graduation. He didn't invite me to the dinner afterward. Elaine cried that night and said, "He's just in a weird phase. Give him time." So I kept giving time, money, energy. When he wanted to start his own drone photography business, I was the one who loaned him the $3,000 for the equipment. He didn't even ask Jeremy. I told myself I didn't care, but each time I gave, I hoped just a little that maybe this time he'd look me in the eye and say, "Thanks, Tom. I couldn't have done it without you." He never did. Fast forward to last year, when Caleb got engaged to a woman named Madison. She was bubbly and overly sweet, like cotton candy that makes your teeth ache. She always called me Mr. Thomas, which made me feel ancient and out of place in my own living room. Still, I played along. I smiled when they showed us venue photos, nodded during endless conversations about color schemes, and when Madison's mom asked if we'd contribute, I didn't hesitate. I paid for the rehearsal dinner, the flower arrangements, and half the catering. No one asked Jeremy for a dime. He was too busy posting Jim's selfies and commenting fire emojis on Caleb's engagement pictures. The wedding arrived quickly, too quickly. It was a hot afternoon in June, the kind where your shirt sticks to your back before you even get inside. I sat quietly during the ceremony. My name wasn't in the program. Jeremy walked him down the aisle. Elaine squeezed my hand and whispered, "He's just trying to honor both sides." I nodded, but I didn't look at her. During the speeches, I stood near the back, sipping a watered-down whiskey. Madison's dad gave a toast, her mom cried, then Caleb took the mic. "I just want to thank everyone who's been here for me, my real family. My mom, of course, and my dad, Jeremy, who's always been there when it counted." I felt it in my stomach, that drop, like missing the last step on stairs in the dark. The room applauded. I didn't. I didn't move, just stared at the condensation on my glass as if it held answers I hadn't found. Later, during photos, the photographer asked for the groom's parents. Jeremy and Elaine stepped forward. Caleb glanced at me, then turned back to the camera. I was standing 10 feet away. I might as well have been 100 miles. Madison gave me a polite smile and said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get one with everyone after." We didn't. Dinner was bearable. I made small talk with some distant relatives and drank just enough to dull the edge a little. Then came the cake. They cut it, kissed, and fed each other a piece while everyone cheered like they were royalty. I clapped mechanically, waiting for the moment I could finally disappear unnoticed. But that's when he came over. Caleb, still holding a half glass of champagne, a smirk playing on his lips as if this were some kind of joke. He dropped the check-a-thick, printed folderite in front of me on the table. I blinked. "Since you didn't do much else," he said, "at least pay for it." I stared at him for a second. I genuinely thought he was kidding, that maybe a punchline was coming, but there wasn't one. His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even bitter. It was dismissive, cold, like I was some hotel concierge he was leaving a tip for. I felt every eye in that corner of the room shift toward us. Not everyone heard him, but enough for my pulse to start hammering in my ears. I picked up the bill. It was for the open bar, the one thing I hadn't agreed to cover nearly $2,200. I stood up slowly, not to make a scene, but because if I moved too fast, I might have said something I'd regret. I looked him in the eye, truly looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the boy I'd taught to drive, or the kid I'd helped through geometry, or the teenager I'd sat up late waiting for after his first party. I saw a man I didn't recognize, a stranger wearing my name like it meant nothing. I placed the bill back in his hands and said, calmly and clearly, "Funny. I paid for more than you ever acknowledged. But don't worry, this one's finally on you." And then I turned, took one last look at the room filled with people clapping for a groom who couldn't see past his own reflection, and walked out past the dance floor, the DJ booth, and the gift table with my name nowhere on it. But that wasn't the end. That was just the silence before the storm. I didn't go home right away. I drove with no destination, no plan, just asphalt and silence, the kind of silence you can only get with your phone turned off and the windows rolled halfway down, letting in the humid night air that clings to your skin like guilt. I wasn't angry in the typical sense, no shouting, no punching the steering wheel. It was worse. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just enough behind to keep breathing. 14 years. 14 years of being there when his real family couldn't be bothered. And in one night, I was reduced to just Mom's husband. I parked in a gas station lot off the highway around midnight, grabbed a lukewarm coffee, sat in my car, and stared at the receipt for a long time before tossing it onto the passenger seat. I wasn't planning anything that night, but I also knew I wasn't going to pretend nothing had happened. Not this time. When I got home, Elaine was already in bed. Her dress was draped over the chair in the corner, and her makeup had been wiped clean. But her eyes, when she looked at me, said she knew. She sat up. "Tom," she started. I held up a hand. "Don't." She closed her mouth and nodded. We didn't talk much that night. I think she knew there was nothing she could say that wouldn't sound like an excuse. The next morning, she tried again. "He didn't mean it that way." I just laughed one of those bitter laughs that tastes like old coffee and resentment. "How did he mean it then?" Elaine flinched. She didn't answer. That week, I pulled out my old filing cabinet and started organizing. Receipts. Not just for the wedding expenses, though I had those too, but for everything. The drone equipment, the car down payment I'd helped him with when he couldn't qualify for a loan, the dental surgery he needed in college, the internship that didn't pay, so I covered his rent for 3 months. Every little thing documented in dry, impersonal ink, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I wanted to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it all, that I hadn't hallucinated the years of support just because Caleb chose to pretend I was invisible. Elaine didn't understand what I was doing. She thought I was being obsessive. "You're not the kind of man who keeps score," she said. "Maybe I should have been," I replied. 3 weeks went by without a word from Caleb. No text, no call, no thank you note, nothing. Meanwhile, Jeremy posted wedding photos with captions like, "Proud to call this man my son. Blood is everything." That one hit me like a sucker punch, not because it was true, but because Caleb had let it be true. Then came the phone call. Elaine answered first, and I could hear her tone shift immediately, blend of polite concern and maternal nerves. "Tom," she mouthed, holding the phone out. "It's Caleb." I took the phone, expecting, I don't know, a weak apology, maybe a casual "hey" about that night, ... But instead, he sounded annoyed, impatient. "Hey, so we got the invoice for the open bar, and they said it still hasn't been paid." I leaned against the counter. "That's correct." Silence. "You said you were going to cover it," he said. "No," I replied evenly. "I said I'd cover the rehearsal dinner, the flowers, and half the catering. You can check the emails." Another pause. "Well, now we're in a bind, and Madison's parents are saying they already paid more than their share, so we kind of need you to take care of it." I laughed. "You need me to?" "Yeah. Well, you were there, and you know how these things go. It's just easier if you do it." Easier for who? There was that silence again, that awful, choking silence where entitlement and realization collide. I don't have that kind of money right now, he muttered. I thought you'd want to help. Help, I said. Like you helped me by calling me your mother's husband, or by dropping the bill in front of me like a waiter who forgot your drink order. I was just stressed that day. So was I. More silence. Look, he finally said, can you just do this for Mom? And there it was, the guilt. Trip grenade. He didn't even bother hiding it. I'll do one better, I said. I'll send you a copy of all the invoices and receipts I've paid for over the last decade. You can put that in your scrapbook right next to the photos with your real family. I hung up before he could answer. Elaine wasn't happy. She tried to reason with me, said I was making things worse. I asked her if she knew he'd planned to make that speech without mentioning me. She looked away, so I stopped talking about it. I started going through our finances privately, and then I did something that no one, not even Elaine, expected. Canceled the check I had pre-written for their honeymoon fund. Madison's parents had asked if we'd like to contribute to their dream getaway, and I had agreed, wanting to give them something meaningful. But after that wedding night, I shredded the check. They never even knew I had it in the first place. But I wasn't done. The wedding venue had been booked under my company's business account. It was something I offered because I got a steep discount through a long-standing partnership. I'd paid the difference personally, but the account terms still gave me access to the contract. So, when I logged in and saw that the final post-event cleaning fee hadn't been paid, a hefty $700 because some drunk groomsman vomited in the dressing room, I did something that even I hesitated over. I flagged the balance and sent it to collections. In Caleb's name, that was the first domino, and it wasn't the last. The call came on a quiet Wednesday morning, nearly 3 weeks after our last conversation. I was in the middle of my usual routine black coffee newspaper. My dog Gus curled up by the door when Elaine walked in with her phone in her hand, and that look again. The one that says she doesn't want to get involved, but she already is. It's Caleb again, she said quietly, eyes avoiding mine. I took the phone without saying a word. His voice came through, clipped and tense. Did you send the venue bill to collections? I didn't answer immediately. I just stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the backyard where I'd helped him build that rickety treehouse when he was 13. It was still there, barely, lopsided, and half covered in moss, but standing like some metaphor I didn't want to unpack. Yes, I said finally. You couldn't just call me about it. I did call, I replied. You just didn't listen. I'm trying to move forward, Tom, he said, a little too rehearsed. I don't want things to be awkward between us. Awkward, I repeated. You humiliated me in front of 200 people. You acted like I was a background prop, someone to swipe a credit card and then disappear. Now you're saying I'm making it awkward. There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. Madison's upset. I'm sure she is, I said flatly. Tell her she can split the collections notice with you. Real family does things together, right? And I hung up. Elaine didn't say anything, not then. But that night, she sat across from me, at dinner, untouched pasta growing cold between us, and said, I don't think he understands what he did. Then maybe it's time he learns, I said. And that's when I decided to teach him. I pulled out my old hard drive, years of photos, videos, documents. Most people wouldn't have looked twice. But I had something he forgot existed. Every financial file, spreadsheet, every email with, can you help me out just this once? And every thanks, Tom, you're a lifesaver, that somehow never made it into his wedding speech. I compiled it all, not to shame him, not at first, but to show him. I sent him a single email, subject line, in case you forgot. Inside was a clean, concise PDF, 25 pages, timeline, amounts, purpose, outcomes, with one small note at the end. You may not see me as part of your family. That's your right. But don't rewrite history just because it makes your version of the story easier to live with. I won't let you. 3 days passed. No reply. Then Madison called Elaine. I could hear the conversation from the next room. Her voice started high-pitched and panicked, dropped into embarrassment, then landed somewhere between pleading and indignant. He's really upset, Elaine said after hanging up. He didn't realize how much you'd done. He says, it's just a lot to take in. I shrugged. Not my problem anymore, but it wasn't over. Not yet. A week later, a letter came in the mail, not an email, a physical envelope, thick ivory paper. My name written on the front in Caleb's handwriting, shaky and rushed. I didn't open it right away. I set it on my desk. I stared at it for hours, off and on. I'd waited years for acknowledgement. Was this it? Would it finally say what I needed to hear? Would it even matter anymore? That night, Elaine found me still sitting there. "You going to read it?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was just tired. Tired of chasing approval. That never came. Tired of being the backup singer in someone else's main event. But curiosity always wins eventually. So I opened the envelope. The letter was short. "Tom, I read everything. I didn't know how much I didn't know. I thought I was protecting my relationship with my dad, but I see now I hurt you in the process. I don't know if I can fix it, but I want to try. I'm sorry for the wedding, for everything, Caleb. No excuses, no justifications, just words, quiet, unsure words, but words all the same." I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the drawer. I didn't respond, not right away, because this story wasn't about an apology. Anymore, it was about something much deeper, something that couldn't be fixed with a letter or a phone call, something that, whether he realized it or not, had already begun to crack long before the wedding, something that would come to a head at the most unexpected moment when the debt he really owed came due. I didn't write back to Caleb, not for weeks. I didn't know what to say, and honestly, I didn't know what he deserved to hear. The part of me that still ached from being humiliated wanted to slam that door shut forever. But the part of me that had watched him grow up, the one that had waited in hospital waiting rooms, sat in high school bleachers, spent hours helping him pass his driver's test, still remembered the kid who once cried when his goldfish died and asked if heaven had water. It was complicated. Elaine wanted to talk about it constantly. She saw the letter as an olive branch. I saw it as a bandage after a 10-year wound. Eventually, I told her, let him sit with what he's done for a while. See if he still wants to fix it after the silence stretches. But the universe has a funny sense of timing, because about 2 months after the wedding, we got another call. This one wasn't from Caleb, it was from Madison. Her voice was shaky and controlled, like someone trying to sound calm while standing on a cliff's edge. "Hi, Mr. Thomas. I hope I'm not intruding, but Caleb told me not to call you, and I just... ... I didn't know what else to do. My chest tensed immediately. What's going on?" She hesitated, then rushed out the words in one breath. "He lost his job 2 weeks ago, and we just found out the business credit line was closed. The rent's late, and my parents said they're done helping us. He won't talk to anyone, not even me. I thought maybe you could talk to him." It hit me like a sucker punch. I didn't want to admit it hurt, because even now, I still wanted to be someone he could turn to. That lingering hope, pathetic and loyal, sat heavy in my chest. I didn't answer her right away. "Please," she said, "he's drowning." I told her I'd think about it. Then I sat in the living room for almost an hour, just staring at the floor. Gus laid his head on my foot and let out a sigh, like he was tired of this family drama too. Elaine eventually sat beside me. "You going to help him?" she said gently. "I don't know if I should," I replied. "Every time I step in, he erases it, rewrites it, pretends I never existed. How many times am I supposed to show up just to get dismissed?" She put her hand on mine. "Maybe this time you don't help him for him. Maybe you do it for you, so you can finally put this whole thing to bed, knowing you gave it your best shot one last time." And that stuck with me. So I called him. He didn't answer the first 2 times. On the third, he picked up with a flat, "What?" I didn't waste time. "I heard what happened. Do you want to talk?" There was a long pause. Then, in the quietest voice I'd heard from him in years. "Yeah, we met at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Ground. No memories there." He looked different, not physically. Caleb had always been the kind of guy who bounced back from a hangover like he just had a nap. But emotionally, his shoulders sagged. His eyes were sunken in that way people get when their self-worth has taken too many punches in a row. We sat there for a minute in silence before he finally said, "I messed up." I waited, and said not just with the job, with everything. The wedding. You, Mom, all of it. "You did," I said plainly. No sugarcoating. He nodded slowly, like he agreed with the sentence, even though it still stung to hear it out loud. I thought, he said, If I could just make Jeremy feel like a real dad again, maybe he'd finally stay consistent. Like if I made it real for him, he'd be real. You were always there, and I guess I took that for granted. He wasn't, so I kept trying to pull him into the light, and in doing that, I kept pushing you out. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing I was going to get, and more importantly, it was honest. So what now? I asked. I'm trying to get freelance work, he said. Photography gigs. Madison's picking up extra shifts, but we're drowning, Tom. I'm not asking for money. I just ... I need someone to help me figure out how to dig out. And that's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I didn't offer him money, but I did offer him time. 3 nights a week, I met with him in our dining room. We created a spreadsheet. I helped him budget, negotiate with the collections agency, and draft a small business plan that actually made sense. Instead of being just a pile of dreams and a fancy camera, at first, it was awkward. But slowly, Caleb started showing up on time, started asking real questions, started listening. And then one night, about a month in on, as we were finishing up the numbers on a potential wedding shoot contract, he said, "I didn't deserve this." I looked up. "What, you helping me?" "I didn't earn it." I set down my pen. "No," I said, "you didn't." He waited, like he expected a but. I didn't give him one, because that was the truth. He hadn't earned it. He'd burned bridges, taken me for granted, and hurt people along the way. But forgiveness isn't always about fairness. Sometimes it's about closure. A few weeks later, I got a small envelope in the mail, hand-delivered. Inside was a folded wedding photo I hadn't seen. Caleb, Madison, and me, standing beside him, his arm around my shoulder, smiling the kind of smile that didn't look forced. On the back, in his handwriting, were the words, "You were there. You always were. I just needed to open my eyes. Thank you for not giving up on me, Caleb." I didn't cry, not then, but I did slide the photo into the same drawer where I'd kept his letter, not because I needed proof anymore, but because sometimes the things you quietly carry for years deserve a place to rest. Caleb's business picked up after that. Nothing flashy. He wasn't going viral or getting magazine features, but it was steady. He paid off his debts, started sending me updates instead of just posting online for strangers. And slowly, he started acting like a son again. We still had a long way to go, but this time, I wasn't walking that road alone, and neither was he. Funny how the people who push you away hardest are often the ones who need you the most. But now he knows exactly who was standing behind him all along. Not his mom's husband, just family.